All right, we're going to call the St. Croix County Administration Committee meeting to order. Could we get a roll call, please?
Paul Burning,
Present.
Scott Coner,
Present.
Bob Fiedler,
Bob Fiedler, Supervisor Fiedler is excused.
Ryan Shirley.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Excellent, we have a quorum.
I'm present also.
Bob,
I'm here.
I'm temporary.
All right, with the temp helping us, thanks, Janet. We do appreciate you. Approval of minutes, are there any changes, additions, any changes or additions to the minutes? Any changes or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as published. Public comment, is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, we will close that portion of the agenda and move on to business items. Business item number 1, financial report for February of 2025. Administrator Witt.
Yeah, the financial report in the packet is representing through the end of February. I'm kind of going to pause here, look at our vehicle registration fees. You can see the new fee almost for the full year, bringing in about what we expected it would be. And then with the sales tax, it fell just slightly below what we had collected last year. So we were at 12.5 million in 2024, and we're at 12.6 million in 2023. We're budgeted at 12.6 million for 2025. So we should be right in the ballpark, but pretty much on target.
Any questions for the administrator? Is there anything else?
Oh, that was it.
Are there any questions? Supervisor Counter.
Just one question on category again. On the very first one at the very top of the entire report has default under 110. And that's a revenue one, but is that just trying to, what accumulates in that account, or what is that one about?
Dustin, you want to remind him?
I believe the default is, that's the department, and so when we have fund transfers, we don't have a department allocated to it, so it just goes to 0000.
Okay, any other questions for the administrator? Any other questions? Any other questions on the financial report? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move on to business item number 2, ordinance to amend Chapter 1, citations and general provisions of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances. So Administrator Witt, if you'd like to take it, or Corp Counsel.
Yes, so this ordinance is to update Chapter 1, which is currently entitled the Citation Ordinance, and we are renaming it to Citation and General Provisions. This is the chapter that sets forth the deposit amount for each penalty of the chapters that are located within the code. So we rearranged some of the information. That's why you see a lot of redlining and strikeout, is just because we changed the formatting of the ordinance. We also updated the chart because of all the changes to the zoning code, and separating them. We had to make sure that chapters 15, 16, and 18 were added. And then we updated some of the penalty amounts, and most of the changes to this code are just corrections from what we have updated in other ordinances in the code. But I can answer any specific questions that you may have regarding the changes.
Okay, I'm going to call on Supervisor Counter, since he indicated he has some questions and maybe some amendments that he'd like to address prior to us bringing it forward.
Well, one was just, I think, a minor correction, I think, in the charts under the Chapter 81. You have a parentheses at the front, but not one at the rear. Minor catch. I do read it. But the other one, it sounds like we already kind of got covered, and that was under 1.07B, if we wanted to add the highway commissioner And it sounds like, from my understanding is that it wouldn't be necessary under where he stands with actually writing citations.
That is correct. So the chapters that are applicable to the Highway Department are 77, 78, and 79. And those three sections, the penalties that would be issued would be primarily citations by law enforcement. So in speaking with the Highway Commissioner, he did not believe it was necessary to add him to this chapter. Most of the issues he has to deal with, he has statutory regulations, and we oftentimes file small claims court actions on those cases. Everything else would be handled by law enforcement.
Okay, is there any discussion or is there a motion? Does anyone want to bring this forward? Is there a motion to bring this forward? Go ahead, Supervisor Counter.
Make a motion to, for recommending to the full board ordinance to amend Chapter 1, citations and general provisions of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances.
Is there a second? Second by Shirley. Discussion. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question to the floor. All those in favor of the ordinance to amend Chapter 1, citations and general provisions of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. The motion carries unanimously. Item number 3, resolution amending personnel policy regarding vehicle usage. And Corporation Counsel, can I turn this over to you?
Probably Audrey or Dustin.
Nope, me.
Oh, hello.
Yeah. This one's mine. Yeah, we're amending the vehicle usage policy. Our main point of this was around the personal usage, and kind of making sure we're following IRS rules. So while we did it, we also cleaned up some other areas. Page 3, just some minor copy updates that we spelled out Wisconsin, capitalized department head. And then in the meat and bones of it, the meat and potatoes of it, personal use under that policy, we updated the approval required prior to supervisor or from a vehicle justification form, which we actually couldn't find existed, to instead having supervisor department head approval. We also cleaned up to verify that only commuting and personal miles are required to be documented. We did not need the business mileage reported. We also deleted a section around reporting all miles and separating out the personal miles, and then cleaned up where we actually had a reference to form that needed to be completed, but we had to develop that form because we also didn't have that either. So we had to develop that form as well. And then the last thing in that section, we clarified language that once submitted to finance, the personal use of vehicle, county vehicles report will be reviewed, determine if the use is taxable or not to the employee, and then just when we would record it on their wages and withhold taxes on it. And then on page 9, on the last page, we just added in language that mileage reimbursements for personal vehicles need to be submitted with the time frame of the expense reimbursement guidelines, which is currently 90 days.
Okay, so number 3 is resolution amending personnel policy, vehicle usage. Is there any discussion, or would someone like to bring this forward?
I'll move to approve the resolution amending personnel policy, vehicle use.
So there's a motion by Long to approve the resolution. Is there a second? Okay, second by Shirley, as they fought over who was going to second it over here with a thumb war. Anyway, so a discussion. Any discussion? Supervisor Counter.
A couple of things on this one. The first was, they have a section in here about tobacco use in the use in the vehicles, that obviously no tobacco use. The one thing that we may want to consider for an update on that is to also add vaping. Vaping does give a definite negative odor to the vehicles and can be but it's kept separate from the policy of tobacco, so we may want to incorporate the vaping as a restrictive to restrict it from use in the county-owned vehicles also. The other was, trying to remember, maybe Audrey, can you help me with, the one on PMCS, I'm gonna talk separately about, but
The couple that you had talked to me about, one was the trailer and towing, about
you.
adding the
Yep.
functioning lights for that.
yes, thank you. So they have a section in there about making sure, the trailer hitches is secure and it to the vehicle and make sure you have the chains. But they didn't have anything about making sure the trailer lights were plugged in. So I'm just saying, well, if you have those things in there, you probably should say that too, just to keep it consistent with the policy. And was trying to think, other than the PMCS, was there any other ones, Audrey? I apologize, I didn't
That's
bring
okay.
my notes.
The other ones you brought up were like a trip ticket requirement so that we would
So
basically,
that's
for safety
the two
protocol, we
separate.
would know
Yep.
where someone was going before they got in the vehicle and left. And the other one was a preventative maintenance checklist. So kind of checking out the vehicle before you take it for another safety protocol.
And those two, I think we need to do at a different meeting because there's a lot more mechanics to that than a simple change. And we'll talk about that after this, but it would be something for a future meeting.
So for both of those, if I can just comment on those. Looking at, right, policy versus procedural. And so we do have some procedures in place that kind of go along with both of those requests of yours. So our recommendation, I guess, for the trip ticket would be to just keep it as a procedural matter rather than adding it to policy. So basically, every department kind of has their own specifics on this. So like highway and sheriff's office vehicles are already equipped with GPS. So really,
They don't
we
need
wouldn't need a reporting requirement for them. And then places like HHS for client visits to homes or case managers visiting clients in their homes, as a safety protocol, they have to already report to their supervisors before they leave for the day where they're going to be going. So there are some departmental procedures in place already. And then also as part of the checkout for the vehicle, we report in there where we're traveling to when we check out the vehicle as well. So that's kind of a procedural thing as well. So we don't have it in policy dictating like all of these individual steps you have to take, but we do have procedures in place
Yeah, and
already, kind of that.
And
defines.
that covers pretty much most of them. It's more so like, if somebody's checking out a vehicle and they're going down to, we'll say, Madison or the Dells for a meeting, or, where they're holding meetings, and I'm not looking for them to necessarily come in and they have to draw out these maps and all this stuff. It's more so, what's the general route they're taking, and it's more so that if they do have a breakdown on the way, and they're down in Buffalo County someplace where they don't have any cell phone reception, that at least we have a place that we can a little bit backtrack. So most of these, the sheriff's department and all them, they wouldn't be covered under this. It's more so the ones that are using them for events. Just so, and this is something that if we were doing, it'd be something just worked out with their supervisor so that somebody has knowledge of the route and it's for safety reason.
I'm gonna interject. I think what he's looking for is just something to have it so for it is written, Mr. or Mrs. Employee, you must do this per policy, not just per procedure. I think that's what you're looking for, so that there's something to go back to and point at.
That you would want it in policy to,
Probably something general, not necessarily the nitty gritty of it. But I'm interpreting what you're saying. Am I correct?
Yeah, but again, it doesn't have, all the other departments, a lot of them already are very meticulous about this. Highway Department and the Sheriff's Department, all them, they aren't gonna be necessary for that. It's more just the event things that are happening. As far as the PMCS thing, again, that's preventive maintenance checks and services for non-military. But the deal with that one is more so that when you take out a vehicle, it's just a walk around it. I'm not looking for a real technical inspection where they gotta get under the hood and check all the fluids and all, no. It's more so, it's been sitting in a parking lot. Is there any damage done, pre-existing damage before you get in it so that you're not held accountable? Number two, are there any broken lights or physical things that you can see that are wrong, or tires that are deflated? Before you take off, you're just gonna do a walk around and check, look under the vehicle. Is there a big oil spill? It's just simple thing to do before you take off, just to make sure there's nothing pre-existing before you take off. So that's the basics of it, because it sounds like when I talked with Mr. Mavis that they have a really good program for ensuring that all the other services, as far as oils and fluids and things, are checked periodically on a schedule. So it sounds like they have that part under control. But it's just the things to look at before you take off for safety reasons and liability.
And I think your points are well taken. We're looking, though, at a policy that applies to all the county's vehicles and all the employees. And it's just different. It's very different between the
Exactly.
different departments. So I'd really recommend that those items be placed in the departmental work rules, that are formulated by the department and then specific for those departments.
Yes.
And Taylor would be the one that would work directly on the fleet vehicles. So we can enhance the documentation that we have on those, and I think that'll address it. Because I think the other departments actually have them really well covered already.
Yep. And that we're good. Thank you.
So are there any wait, okay, do we have a motion yet? Okay, good. Oh, thank you, Supervisor Counter. And then, so were there any amendments on that? Did you want to do the vape one?
That one, I think,
Okay.
and the lights.
Can you formulate language for a motion there, Corporation Counsel?
Yes, so I believe the motion would be to amend the personnel policy to modify, trailers and towing to include light connection, and also to modify, prohibited tobacco use to include vaping also be prohibited, which I believe is 2 pages down. Page 6.
Supervisor Counter, do you want that to be your motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, is there a second to Supervisor Counter's amendment? Second by Long. Any discussion? Any discussion on the amendment? Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. Now we have the amended resolution amending, boy, Otino would have fun with this one, amending personnel policy vehicle usage. That is currently brought forward. Is there any discussion on that amended motion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? All those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion is approved unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. Number 4, consideration of deputy medical examiner pay structure. So since I guessed wrong last one, Audrey.
Okay. This one is kind of just based on the facts, so I'm just going to read it off. But we're recommending that we transition the deputy medical examiners. They're currently on a per diem pay structure, move them over to an hourly structure and add them to our regular wage grid. I did a market comparison, looked at internal equity. My recommendation for the deputy medical examiner is grade 21 and the chief deputy medical examiner at grade 24. how we would implement this. All new hires going forward would be placed on the hourly structure. Existing employees will transition from their per diem to the hourly pay effective 12/21/25. That'll be the first pay period to hit 2026. And then the other change we'd like to make is the current on-call, or is to add a shift differential of $1.50 an hour for weekend on-call shifts. So that would be Saturday 6 a.m. to Monday 6 a.m. And that is the gist of it.
Yes, Supervisor Long.
Can you talk a little more about the significance of changing from per diem to hourly and what kind of motivated you? It's got to be much different for these employees, so.
It is. We thought this would be a great time to do it, though, with the change in the medical examiner. And we're actually down to, with the promotion then, to 2 deputy medical examiners. So it's impacting the least number of people to make this transition, which we've really been thinking about for years. We're really just trying to gauge when the best time to do it. And with going from the medical examiner being on a per diem to a salaried position, it's a great time to transition these other ones over also. And that's why we have a slight grandfather for the rest of the year on the 2 that'll remain on the per diem and then switch over. This actually will probably save the county money in the long run, so there's no budgetary amendment required for it.
And if I may, also, I believe this falls in line with what most counties in the state of Wisconsin are doing as well, if that helps.
Yeah, did you find any other per diems at all?
So this puts us in line with 71
Other
of our
counties,
peers.
Yeah. And it helps with WRS reporting too for, we have to track hourly, hours worked. And so we were gonna have to redo our timesheets in the Oracle system in order to be able to do that. He wanted to add the per diem pay structures in there. So right now it's all a manual process, so it'll help it with the administration function on the payroll side as well.
Is there a motion to bring this forward? Motion would be consideration of deputy medical examiner pay structure. Okay, Supervisor Counter?
Make a motion for the consideration of deputy medical examiner pay structure per the draft that's been presented tonight for approval.
All right, we've got a motion and there's a second by Long. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion is approved unanimously. Next up, request for future agenda items. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Any requests for future agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. Anyone have any cool announcements? Anything fun, exciting, cool announcements? Last call, nothing fun happening in anyone's lives. All right, cool. We'll move on to date of next meeting, which will be April 15th, 2025. And with that, all business items have been handled. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good job, Janet.